I pulled up to my cabin earlier than planned, expecting the quiet, peaceful retreat I always look forward to. But the moment I stepped out of my car, I heard screaming loud, frantic, and unmistakably angry. It was Karen, the HOA board member everyone in the neighborhood knows for overstepping boundaries. And she wasn't just yelling at the air. She was calling the cops. As I walked closer, my heart sank. Through the cabin window, I could see signs that someone had been in my space. Chairs moved, things slightly out of place, and the unmistakable sound of laughter coming from inside. Karen's face turned beet red as she waved her arms, pointing at me like I was the intruder. "You can't just come back early," she shouted, her voice shaking. "There are guests here. You're not supposed to." Her words trailed off as she realized the cops were already on the line, her panic rising. I froze for a second, unsure whether to confront her or step back and wait. This wasn't just an argument with a nosy neighbor. Something felt off. Who exactly had she invited into my cabin, and what were they doing there? I could feel the tension crackling in the air, the kind that makes your stomach twist and your mind race 100 miles an hour. I knew I had to handle this carefully, but every instinct screamed that things were far from normal. And just as I reached for the door handle, Karen's scream pierced the air again. This time, it wasn't just at me. Something inside the cabin had changed, and I wasn't sure I was ready for what I was about to see. My mind raced as I stepped back from the door, trying to piece together what had happened. I had been planning this solo getaway for weeks, a quiet cabin tucked away from the main road, a place where I could escape the noise of everyday life. The idea that someone had barged in without my permission, and worse, that Karen had orchestrated it, felt like a violation I couldn't ignore. I remembered the last conversation I'd had with her during a neighborhood meeting. Karen had always been controlling, insisting she had the right to monitor everyone's property. At the time, I laughed it off, thinking she was just being dramatic. But now, seeing the evidence of her intrusion, her calls to the police, and the faint echoes of voices inside my cabin, I realized how serious she could be and how dangerous it was to underestimate her. I glanced around the driveway. No cops yet, but her phone was glued to her ear, her hands shaking as she gestured wildly. I knew if they arrived before I figured out what was happening, I'd have a hard time explaining the situation without sounding crazy. Who were the guests she had invited? Friends, neighbors, or someone else entirely? The uncertainty made my chest tighten. I had to make a choice. Confront her directly, risk escalating the situation, or wait and try to observe what was going on from a safe distance. Each second felt heavier than the last, and every instinct screamed that the truth about my cabin on Karen's real intentions was far stranger than I could have imagined. Even from a few feet away, I could hear the laughter inside shift, almost as if it had stopped mid-sentence, replaced by a silence that felt wrong. I took a slow step closer, trying to peer through the curtains without drawing attention. Shadows flickered across the cabin walls, and the muffled voices now sounded strained, like a conversation that had taken an unexpected turn. My mind raced through possibilities. Had Karen really invited friends over, or was there something else going on that she didn't want me to see? The more I thought about it, the less sense it made. As I circled around the cabin to check the back, I noticed small signs of disruption: footprints in the dirt, a chair slightly out of place, a coffee mug left on the railing. Someone had been living in my space without permission, and Karen was either oblivious or deliberately covering it up. I could feel the frustration and fear mixing together, making it hard to think clearly. Then, I remembered my neighbor, Jason, who had warned me about Karen months ago. He'd said she had a habit of testing boundaries with everyone in the community, always trying to assert control over properties that weren't hers. Jason's words came back now like a warning, echoing in my head. Could she really be using my cabin as some kind of pawn in her power games? Or was there an even stranger motive behind it? I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, and then froze. From a small gap in the window, I saw a movement that didn't match Karen's frantic gestures. Someone else, someone I didn't recognize, was crouched near the kitchen, and their attention wasn't on Karen at all. The realization hit me. This wasn't just about a neighbor gone too far. Something bigger, something I hadn't anticipated, was unfolding inside my own cabin. And the worst part, I had no idea how deep it went. Every instinct screamed at me to retreat, but curiosity and fear kept me rooted in place. Knowing that the next few moments could change everything, I pressed myself against the side of the cabin, my heart hammering in my chest. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle from the trees outside felt magnified, like the world had shrunk down to this single, tense moment. Through the window, I could see Karen pacing frantically, phone still pressed to her ear, her face a mix of panic and indignation. But it wasn't her that had me frozen, it was the stranger inside, moving deliberately, almost casually, as if they had every right to be there. My mind raced, trying to make sense of the situation. Who were these people? Friends of Karen's, or something else entirely? And why would they need to hide when they knew I was returning? Every instinct told me this was bigger than a simple HOA dispute. I could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating, like the calm before a storm. I glanced around, looking for anything I could use to protect myself if things went south. The cabin keys jingled in my pocket, but I didn't dare move closer. From the corner of my eye, I saw movement near the sliding door, another shadow slipping along the wall. The muffled voices inside were now lower, urgent, almost conspiratorial. My stomach twisted. Something was happening in my own cabin that I couldn't yet understand, and Karen's screaming was only a distraction. Then I heard it, a door creak from the other side of the cabin, followed by a stifled gasp. The stranger was closer than I thought. My pulse spiked, and I felt a cold sweat on my forehead. Every second stretched into an eternity as I realized I was about to come face to face with whatever or whoever had taken over my cabin. And in that moment, I knew nothing would be the same once the confrontation finally happened. I froze, every nerve on edge, as the sliding door slowly creaked open. But instead of the stranger I had been watching, it was Karen, her face pale, eyes wide with a fear I hadn't seen before. She stepped aside, and that's when I saw it. Another figure behind her, holding something that glinted in the dim light. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just a random guest or some over-the-top HOA stunt. Something else was happening, something I couldn't have predicted. Karen's voice cracked as she whispered, "You have to see this." I didn't want it to happen, I swear. My curiosity battled with the surge of fear. I wanted to back away, to run, but my feet felt glued to the ground. The figure behind her stepped forward, revealing a familiar face I never expected to see in my cabin. Someone from my past, someone I thought I'd left behind, standing there as if nothing had changed, yet their presence made everything feel wrong. The stranger inside shifted, sensing something, and the air in the cabin felt heavier, charged with tension. Karen's earlier bravado had vanished completely. She looked almost fragile now, like a person caught in something far beyond her control. My mind spun. What were they doing here? Why hide? And why had Karen called the cops in such a panic if this was all part of her plan? Every instinct screamed danger, yet I couldn't tear my eyes away. The realization hit me. This wasn't just an intrusion. There was a deeper game at play, one I was only just beginning to understand. And as the shadows moved and whispers filled the cabin, I knew the next few moments would decide everything, but I still had no idea which side I could trust. I took a shaky breath, summoning every ounce of courage, and stepped onto the porch. Karen flinched, like she expected me to explode at any second. The figure behind her, someone I hadn't seen in years, finally spoke. "I'm not here to hurt you," they said, their voice low but urgent. "But you need to understand why we're here." My heart pounded, but curiosity forced me forward. As they explained, the pieces started to fall into place. Karen hadn't just invited random people over. She had discovered something unusual in the cabin weeks ago. Something that belonged to me, but had been forgotten in the chaos of life. This mysterious group was actually trying to retrieve it before it caused real trouble. Suddenly Karen's screaming and frantic phone calls made sense. She hadn't been attacking me. She had been trying to protect me from a problem I didn't even know existed. I stepped inside, my eyes adjusting to the dim cabin light. The tension that had been building for hours now shifted into a strange mix of relief and disbelief. Things I had assumed were violations of my privacy were actually protective measures. Karen avoided my gaze, looking ashamed but relieved that the truth was finally coming out. Just as I began to process everything, the unexpected twist hit. The person who had seemed like an lethal one I thought I could trust slipped a small envelope onto the counter before vanishing without another word. My hands trembled as I picked it up, realizing it contained something I never could have imagined.